There's a growing belief that Jazz Chisholm Jr. will be traded at the deadline by the Miami Marlins. 2 years of control after this year, but a healthy Jazz and a productive Jazz is now the right time for the Marlins to move their franchise player. Tons to get into. This is Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins, your daily Marlins pod. I'm your host, of course, Peter Pratt. Hit me up at Miami Marlins _UK. Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome to the show. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. Of course, this is your team every day, even into July. I know, very much into July. July is going to be on fire. Make sure you hit subscribe wherever you get your pods. Don't forget to hit subscribe as well on the YouTube channel. Join me there. Join me in the comments. And let me know your thoughts. Today's episode is solely looking at trade deadline possibilities. Who are the names that could be moved? Who will be moved? Who could be moved? Who shouldn't be moved? Is everyone? Could anyone be moved? I think that's kind of the question that I'm asking at this point. There's some obvious ones. There's some middling ones. There's some less obvious ones. Frankly, the Marlins at this point should be listening on everyone. So there's tons to get into. But the big headline, I guess, from Craig Mish's article with the Herald is that there's a growing belief that the Marlins will trade Jazz Chisholm Jr. That's changed. That definitely wasn't the sense that we had earlier in the year. The sense was that Jazz Chisholm Jr. unlikely to be moved at the deadline. Unlikely that the Marlins had a match due to history, personality, production, injury. I don't know, all of these things together. But seemingly there is a trade market that is starting to bubble along for Jazz Chisholm Jr. There's a trade market for other guys too. So I'm going to get into tons of the names that could be moved, should be moved, or maybe won't be moved. This episode, though, is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And where are we starting? We're starting with a name that we discussed yesterday on yesterday's show when we were talking about the all-star representative for the Marlins. That guy is Tanner Scott. This is the guy that's the headline guy that we know has to be traded. It isn't like, can he be traded? Will he be traded? What are the Marlins, going to do with Tanner Scott? No. It is solely down to what value can the Marlins extract from Tanner Scott. How are they going to play it? They're going to leave it to the last minute. Are they going to go early? We don't know, but nevertheless, it's reported that, reported. We don't have to report that people are interested in Tanner Scott. He's one of the best relievers in the game. He's available. He's going to be, 30 soon, Tanner Scott, but you acquire him, a couple of $1 million left to pay him the rest of the way. You acquire him, you add a stud lefty reliever, whether he's a closer, whether he's a setup guy, I don't know. It doesn't matter. At this point, you just stock your bullpen full of studs. That's the way to do it. Tanner Scott can do that. Anyone should be calling on Tanner Scott. The interesting bit that I'm thinking about is, does Tanner Scott actually reach free agency? Very interested. Does the acquiring team double down on Tanner Scott and try to lock him up? I don't think we need to spend a ton of time thinking about Tanner Scott. Because we all know the outcome. It's just to what team, what return, and when. Does he make it to the All-Star game as a Marlin? I think probably yes. But we will see. We will see. Clearly, from a Marlins perspective, they need to make sure nothing happens to Tanner Scott. I've been saying that for months. It's been clear they need to move him. It's been clear he's a stud. It's been clear his trade value is connected to his health because there's only this year of control remaining. And so the Marlins continue just to run it to the wire. They're looking to maximize maybe the return by holding on, but that comes with risk. Hopefully this does not backfire. We are praying that Tanner Scott, for many reasons, remains healthy and remains a stud for the next few weeks at least. I'm very interested to see what Tanner Scott delivers outside of Lone Depot in a more boisterous environment, in a more hostile environment. There's more pressure on, maybe. Don't know. Interested. Let's talk about the main topic, I would say, from the Craig Mish Herald article. Make sure you go and check it out in full. But there is a growing belief that Jazz Chisholm Jr. will be traded at the deadline. Craig notes here, has put together his healthiest season to date. He's producing at the top of the lineup, and teams are taking notice. And then Craig goes to call it out. This is the first time there has been genuine interest in Chisholm, as injuries and his personality have kept other clubs wondering what they would be getting in return. Wow. That's huge. Huge, huge, huge. Because, listen, Jazz, when he's been on the field, in my opinion, has been productive at least as a strong side platoon guy, either at second base or at center field. This year, we've seen progression and him becoming an everyday player. And so, even if Jazz couldn't hit any lefties, there'd still be value in Jazz Chisholm Jr. playing above average second base defense or center field defense and being in the strong side platoon. With that speed, that power, that versatility, that dynamic talent that exists, all of these things. So I think it's very interesting that other clubs haven't been genuinely interested to date. However, we're getting the sense that now is the time with Jazz. On a personal level, this will be a tough one to swallow because, everyone has favorite players. Everyone has players that excite them, some more than others. Jazz Chisholm Jr. for me has always been a player that I have been super excited by in terms of what we see on the field. I think there's I buy into the flair, into the swag. Like that, I'm all for that too. I like everything about Jazz Chisholm Jr. and he's my favorite offensive guy easily. My previous favorite offensive guy was Lewis Brinson, by the way. So, listen, when I connect with a guy, I stick with him through thick and thin, no doubt about it. But for me, we've seen a maturity from Jazz this year. We've seen progression. We've seen a lot. Hence the interest on a maybe across other clubs, which I think is very interesting. But I just want to call it out that I don't totally buy that there have been no clubs interested in Jazz to date. I just can't believe that. I see what I see on the field, and there's a role that Jazz can play on any roster. So, I think that's, we'll see. I don't know, but that's just my sense, is that feels a bit unfair to say that there's never been any interest. But I'd absolutely believe there's interest right now. The other thing to call out on Jazz, by the way, is we've never seen, we know Jazz's personality. We know the type of guy he is. And there may be fans of other clubs that may be dreaming on other guys. Oh, Cody Bellinger, Luis Robert, etc., whatever it might be. Let me tell you, with Jazz Chisholm Jr., there is a chance. No, there isn't a chance. There is an absolute stud in that profile. I think a lot of other fan bases maybe are undervaluing Jazz at this point. The feeling that he's overrated continues to ripple through. Overrated Jazz Chisholm Jr. But what we've seen is Jazz Chisholm Jr. playing at a ballpark that hampers him, suppresses his numbers. So if you want to go and look at his numbers and all that kind of thing, maybe the counting stats, it suppresses the numbers, Lone Depot. We know that. It's one of the hardest offensive ballparks to play in. That's Jazz's home. At the same time, the club has been erratic. The culture has been erratic that Jazz has called out. The atmosphere in the ballpark, I don't think truly aligns to Jazz. I get the sense that if the dude's playing for the Bravos and it's packed out there in Truist every day, I'd be very interested to see what version of Jazz Chisholm Jr. you would get. That's my sense. Plonk Jazz in that Bravos organization, and most likely, in my opinion, Jazz's game goes to the next level. His profile goes to the next level. Frankly, he goes to the Braves. All of a sudden, within a year's time, everyone will be talking about Jazz Chisholm Jr. saying, wow, we were wrong, and the Bravos have done it again. I could see it coming a mile off, that situation. Very interested to see where he does land, if indeed he is moved. I'm interested to see what role he plays for that organization, what position he fields. Will he return to the infield? Will he continue at center field? I don't know. It's going to be a painful one because, in general, the Marlins are, they're going through a rebuild at this phase. And with that, there's players that are more akin to a Major League Baseball player or an above average one than others. Jazz Chisholm Jr. has been the Marlins' best offensive player this year. He's their spark plug. Often when the Marlins play well and the offense plays well, Jazz is normally playing well. He's been out there pretty much every day this time around as well. And so, listen, as you know, people listen to the show, I'm a massive Jazz fan. Always will be. Always will be. I hope they don't move him this deadline because I'm excited to see Jazz the rest of the way for the Marlins. I hope they don't because that's for personal reasons. I like watching Jazz every day. And trust me, I'm not going to be watching the Bravos every day just for Jazz. No, not a chance. I'll follow him. I'll check the box scores, whatever it might be. I'll probably, if it's a UK-friendly Bravos game, I'll tune in. But there ain't no way I'm going to be watching Bravos games every day for Jazz. No. So, I mean, I'm not watching the Marlins every day at this point, let alone the Bravos. Who finishes with the worst record this year? Is it the Marlins or Bravos? Only kidding, but kind of, half kidding. The Bravos, they look like they need to be active, which is why I'm very interested to see what they do. Very interested. I think Jesus Sanchez, to be honest with you, could be a very intriguing piece for the Bravos. Effectively, the reverse Jared Kelenic, who's had a stunning season for the Bravos to date. But they need a lefty stick. They need a lefty stick bad. So let's not forget, Jazz Chisholm Jr. is also a lefty stick, by the way, could play anywhere. So, they need to try and replace Ronald Acuna Jr. That's very, very hard to do, clearly. This version of Ronald Acuna Jr., the 2024 version, easier to replace. The 2023 version, impossible to replace, I would say. Pretty much the second best player in the game, I guess, in 2023. I want to continue talking about Jazz. I also want to talk about some other guys that could be moved or need to be moved or that the Marlins should absolutely listen on. One of them is Jesus Sanchez. A lot of people will say, now's not the time to trade Jesus Sanchez. He's got multiple years of control, 3 after this. Just for clarity on that. But Jesus Sanchez all of these guys continue to be depreciating assets. Considering the Marlins are unlikely to be in a position to contend next year, probably the year after, then why continue to depreciate that asset? Why not move it now? Why not move it to hungry, thirsty teams like the Bravos? Maximize the value on Jesus Sanchez. We'll talk about that right after the ads. But before we do that, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at FanDuel. Yes, sir. And guys, I love sports. You know this. And I love them so much, I never want them to stop. No, I don't. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports, they're not sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. I'm just dreaming up bets. Dreaming up bets. Jazz Chisholm Jr. to the Braves. What's the price on that one? Good question. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone. Every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen, guys. It's Tuesday, the 9th of July, and we are talking trade deadline. We are talking Craig Mish Herald's article. He's called out Tanner Scott will be moved. He's called out that the Marlins are likely to move Jazz Chisholm Jr. as well. Shocker. Shocker. We then talk about a ton of bullpen arms. Declan Cronin, Calvin Fauché. We talk about Josh Bell, expiring deal. Makes sense. Got to eat the money, but, probably you can find a home. Interesting bit at the back end of the article. Other players of note, Bryan De La Cruz has drawn some interest, but is under club control up to 2028, through 2028. So 3 more years of control for De La Cruz. It's the same for Jesus Sanchez. Andrew Nardi, similar situation. I think 4 years of control for Andrew Nardi beyond. So a lot of control for these guys. And I get that. Why move them now? That's the question. Why move these guys now? Well, why retain them is the other question. To what purpose? For what purpose? Do you need Andrew Nardi as the closer for the Marlins in 2025? I don't believe so. I don't believe Andrew Nardi is the closer for the Marlins. Even if he converts every single save, we'll probably have 20 saves. I think the Marlins are going to be absolutely terrible in 2025 as well. I think they could be the worst team in baseball in 2025 by their record, particularly if they move Jazz Chisholm Jr. as well. I mean, they struggle with offense already. They continue to move their best offensive pieces. This team could be the lowest scoring team in the history. They're not signing any free agents because they don't want to come to Miami. The ones that do end up signing eventually retire mid-season. So the Marlins have got an offensive problem. They've got nothing in AAA that's going to solve it. They're not going to sign any free agents. They're not going to trade for guys that are big league ready because we've already seen the profile. Guys, I want to call it out to you now. 25 is a wash. 26, probably the same. With that being said, those 3 years of control for Bryan De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez, Andrew Nardi, yes, they may be controlled, but to what point? The Marlins aren't going to be in the mix at all. They're going to be a bottom 5 team for the next 2 seasons after this one, in all likelihood. So, with a depreciating asset that has interest now, De La Cruz some interest, Jesus Sanchez interest, Andrew Nardi interest. These guys all have interest right now. They've got control. That adds value. You've got performing guys with interest, with control, that adds value. Now's the time. Pull the trigger on Bryan De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez, Andrew Nardi, all of them. Let's blow this bad boy up. Because 25's a wash and 26 is too. Let's blow it up. We're wasting time. We're wasting time thinking about holding on to Jesus Sanchez for another season and a half. Why? What are you going to get out of Jesus Sanchez in a year and a half? Move him now. Move him now. Capitalize on it. Get the prospects that you want and start developing them. Let's get this farm juiced. I want this farm pumped to the max. There's no point, let's get the guys in the farm now. If we're so convinced about our ability to identify talent, develop talent, seems to be like we're trending in the right direction at the moment. There has been some green shoots. So let's not waste away Bryan De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez, and the rest of them on the big league roster that is completely dog shit for another year and a half before they then eventually move them. And they go and get another 18-year-old and plug them in, and okay, their ETA then becomes 2032. It doesn't make any sense to me. People on Twitter that I've been talking with today, they see it differently. It's fine. I'm just putting it out there. This is how I see it. Depreciating assets that have value right now, that get guys in the farm that you can start working with now. Because what the Marlins have told me by their trade for Dylan Head and his age and profile, by the way they've managed Max Meyer, because they're desperate not to burn service time now. They want extra years of control on Max Meyer. Everything they're doing is telling me that the Marlins their window is going to be at the back end of the 2020-somethings. 2028 and beyond is probably when where the Marlins' heads are at. That's the timeline we're talking about here. 5 and 6 cooked. 7, maybe some green shoots. 28, okay, we're in the mix. I don't know. Feels like that aligns. Max Meyer, Thomas White, Noble Meyer, all these guys, super young guys. These are the guys that the Marlins are going to be leaning on in 2028, 2029, and 2030. So let's not just sit here thinking you can't move De La Cruz because he's got so much control. I mean, it's probably a bad example in some ways, but look what the White Sox did with Jake Burger. They moved him in his 5 years of control because they loved Jake Eder's profile. Will that end up being a bust? I don't know. Will what the Marlins do end up being a bust? But I don't think the Marlins can be afraid to move guys because they've got 3 more years of club control at this point. Because they're effectively going to be pointless years at the big league level. Pointless. So move them now. If there's interest, get the guys you like, if you like them. Get them into the system. And let's get working on them. Let's get them into the Gabe Kapler lab. That's what I'm thinking. Let me know what you think. I think it's a very interesting topic around particularly those guys. There's a few others that I think also could be moved, should be moved. Talk about them in more detail. But firstly, let's let you know about our good friends over at PrizePicks. Yes, sir. And guys, PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app and has over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in, baby. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks. Yes, you heard that right. 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Turn $10 into 1,000. If you're looking for promotions, then tonight is your night. PrizePicks has got you covered every week. And it lowers select player stats projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit. So make sure you load up on Tuesday today. Get those Marlins hitters in. They're facing a righty, so get the Marlins guys in. Or you can get your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. So all you have to do is download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And this episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at the Tax Network USA. And here on Locked On Marlins, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. And just because tax season is over does not mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. And make sure you mention Locked On Marlins at checkout, and you'll receive a $250 discount off their services. All right, guys, welcome back to Locked On Marlins on Tuesday, the 9th of July. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen, guys. We are talking trade deadline and the guys that could be moved. Tanner Scott, we've discussed. Jazz Chisholm Jr., we've discussed. I also discussed some of the guys that are unlikely to be moved, it seems. In Bryan de la Cruz, in Jesus Sanchez, in Andrew Nardi. Guys that have 3+ years of control. The feeling is that they won't be moved because they can be big pieces for the Marlins next year. Why? The team's going to be crap. Move them now. That's what I think anyway. Jesus Luzardo's hurt, so that scuppers the Marlins' plans. Ken Rosenthal a few weeks back was like, Jesus Luzardo, tell me about that one, Ken. He gone. Well, it doesn't sound like he's going to be gone anymore. Ken Rosenthal's just out there just like, being very matter of fact. The guys are going to be moved. Jesus Luzardo, gone. Jazz Chisholm Jr., gone. Tanner Scott, gone. I mean, that one's fair. But it's very funny seeing him talk about it. Things change. Plans change, right? Jesus Luzardo, they look like they were going to move him. And now they are not. So I think that injury makes sense for the Marlins, not to move Jesus Luzardo at this point. Let's get him back. Let's see what's cooking. with him next year. Let's rebuild his value. Very similar to the situation of Sandy Alcantara. I note, obviously, in this article from Craig Mish, no mention of Sandy Alcantara at all. He is intensifying his workout, blah, 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 whatever it might be. But I just wanted to remind you, just on Jesus Luzardo, that headed into next year, he now has 2 years of control remaining. So I know we're all clamoring. Let's not forget, the Marlins in the offseason were trying to move Jesus Luzardo and his 3 years of control. Yes, the Marlins, with one eye on the future, one eye on the present, they were trying to move Jesus Luzardo and his 3 years of control. The Marlins right now have both eyes on the future. And that says to me they should absolutely be considering moving Jesus Sanchez, Bryan De La Cruz, Andrew Nardi, and all of them that have 3+ years of control. They've already shown that they're willing to do it. They were willing to do it with Jesus Luzardo. That says to me that we should absolutely not rule out a Luzardo, De La Cruz, or Nardi deal. Other guys that I absolutely think should be in consideration from a pitching standpoint, Craig talks about some of the relievers. Craig was the first one, I think, that called out Declan Cronin a few months ago to say he's garnering interest. I think that's still the case. I feel like from Cronin's perspective, he's regressed a touch, but there's still value there. There's always going to be value. I think the Marlins could move up to 5 relievers. I could absolutely see that. Tanner Scott, we know. Declan Cronin, we know. Calvin Fauché, potentially. Andrew Nardi, potentially. And for me, the other wild card right at this point is AJ Puk. Because AJ Puk, okay, he had a terrible start to the year as a rotation guy. But AJ Puk, since returning back to the pen, has been more like himself. AJ Puk only has 2 years of control remaining after this year. So for me, we are absolutely in the Puk moving window. There's going to be interest. There is interest in Tanner Scott. Big lefty that can get strikeouts, whether he's pitching in the 9th, the 8th, the 7th, multi-innings, I don't know. I know AJ Puk hasn't quite demonstrated the same abilities as Tanner Scott this year. But if you're in the market, and by all accounts, the market is 12 clubs for for Tanner Scott, at least 12 clubs. If you're in the market, that's 11 clubs that are going to miss out on Tanner Scott. You then have to have a backup plan. Your backup plan could absolutely be Andrew Nardi or AJ Puk, either of them. The profiles are similar, kind of. They're not quite as good, but AJ Puk, I think in particular, could be similar. Let's not forget, Puk was the closer until he got hurt and then was Wally pipped by Tanner Scott. And then the Marlins decided to try and put AJ Puk in the rotation for whatever reason. We don't know why. We still don't know why on that one. So that's the one I'd keep my eye out for as well, is AJ Puk. But, that's 5 relievers I could absolutely see being moved. The Marlins don't need relievers for next year or the year after. It doesn't matter. We know what Peter Bendix will do. He'll go and find another version of Calvin Fauché, another Declan Cronin, another Andrew Nardi. Let's not forget where Nardi came from. Tanner Scott, to be honest with you, felt like a bit of a throw-in as well. It was Cole Sulser that was seemingly the big piece in that. That's Kim Ang's deal, but you know what I'm saying? Bullpens are fluid. If guys are performing right now and they have value and this team's willing to pay, the Marlins are prioritizing rebuilding and restocking the farm. They don't need relievers for next year, or really not good ones. And frankly, they will find other guys that they will turn into good ones. So they should be listening on every single reliever. All of them could be gone. I mean, the Marlins bullpen in August, it could be just a whole clean slate. And I'm all for it. If you can turn those guys into prospects that fit the profile and get developing, I'm all for it at this point. I'm fully bought in, because one eye on the present, one eye on the future has turned the Marlins into a terrible big league team. They've been terrible. Yes, the injuries and the rotation have absolutely hurt them, but injuries will pile up again next year. They're inevitable in baseball right now. They're inevitable. We don't know what Sandy will come back. I know what type of Sandy will come back, but we don't know when Sandy will be moved. We don't know. For me, this window is Peter Bendix's window. It's the perfect time. It's going to feel painful because Jazz is going to be moved. Fan favorite. Scott, also, fan favorite, absolute stud, one of the best relievers in the game. The Marlins are moving one of the best relievers in the game. Not just one of the best relievers available, it's one of the best relievers in the game. The Marlins are a glorified farm system for other proper big league clubs. That's the disappointing thing here, is the Marlins are effectively a AAA organization working to develop players for other organizations at this point. They've taken Scott to the next level. They've taken maybe Jesus Sanchez to the next level. Andrew Nardi, Declan Cronin. They've taken all these guys to the next level. And now they're going to move them to bring in some young guys that may or may not become big leaguers in the future. Who knows? It's going to be fun for people that follow the team because we love drama, and I love the drama, and I love covering the drama, no doubt about it. But don't get me wrong. Do not get me wrong. This is painful. This is painful when you move big league talent for 19-year-old dudes that may or may not be good. It's a tough sell to the fans. It's been sold as a necessary requirement. It's necessary for a few reasons. We won't get into that in this episode because, well, we're out of time. But my main summary is Jazz being available and their interest in Jazz is right. I think Jazz is going to absolutely pop off in a proper organization, a proper one. Imagine Jazz. I don't really want to imagine this, but imagine Jazz on the Braves. Just imagine how good Jazz Chisholm Jr. would be in the Braves organization with that fan base, with those guys, with the swag, with everything about that organization. To be honest, I actually want Jazz to go to the Braves because I want to see him reach his potential, which I know is there. I know it's there. I think there could be 5 relievers, up to 5 relievers, maybe even 6. Could be even 6 relievers traded. Trevor Rogers, Edward Cabrera, who knows? Is there interest? I don't know. Maybe they hold on to them. AJ Puck, I think, is an outside chance to be moved. Only 2 years of control remaining at this point. After this year, anyway. Should be an interesting one. But for me, keep your eyes peeled on De La Cruz, on Jesus Sanchez. Those 2 guys. They're performing well. Multiple years of control. But the control's irrelevant. The Marlins aren't going to be competitive. Let's move them now while they're at their peak. Because they are at their peak. Probably. Let's move them now. Let's get guys in the farm system. Let's get working on them and start building for the future. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen, guys. The Marlins are actually playing a game this evening against the Astros. It's against a righty. In all likelihood, against the right-handed pitcher. The Marlins probably get the dub. Look forward to recapping that tomorrow. We'll see you then.